As many of you know, there was some critical conditions on the Caldor Fire yesterday. We saw a massive increase in fire behavior as the Caldor Fire made a run closer towards South Lake Tahoe and led to some new evacuation orders. And unfortunately, there's some even more critical conditions coming in this afternoon. So I wanted to do a special update and forecast to not only go over all the information that we know so far, but also to focus on what we can expect this afternoon. Because, like I said, that there's a red flag warning in place and there are some critical conditions coming in. So, just looking at the satellite imagery from yesterday, you can see that increase in activity that I was talking about, just based on those two pyrocumulus clouds you can see right there. If I go back and forth, you'll be able to see that increase in activity we had yesterday. Fire, I believe, grew up to 3 to 4 acres up towards the northeast, which is the exact area we didn't want to see it growing. And what we were hoping was that it would calm down overnight, but unfortunately, conditions remained very dry overnight. Our relative humidity remained below 30%, and because of that, the fire was able to continue some of that activity throughout the overnight hours. And this is what it looks like as of right now. So more activity than we usually see this early in the day. So it gives an idea of what we can unfortunately expect to see later in the day, because we're starting from a higher baseline. There's more fire activity going on right now. You can see that large plume coming off of it already, and it's only about 9 in the morning. And then, as I said earlier, we have that red flag warning directly over the Caldor Fire, which main reason for that, there's going to be very low relative humidity. There's going to be an increase in wind gusts compared to previous days, which is very unfortunate because you think about all of that activity that we did have yesterday. That was mostly due to the fact that the air was very dry and it was mixing with those critically dry fuels as well. And today we're going to have those same kind of conditions where it's extremely dry. There's a lot of critically dry fuels in this area, but now we're also going to be mixing in some southwesterly winds that will act to try to push this fire farther towards the northeast. So you can see the extent of where this fire was able to grow yesterday. This map basically shows where the current fire perimeter is, shown in that red shaded color, and then where you see those red dots, that's where a lot of the fire activity was over the last 24 hours. And you can see that most of it was on this northeastern section here and this southeastern section as well. So 3 key spots that we're going to be watching throughout the day today. This is one spot where you can see some of those hot spots on this western finger have been able to get out of that previous fire perimeter. This is a spot that Cal Fire has said that they've had a lot of trouble with on the past because they have some dozer lines in here, but the fire just keeps slopping over and seeing these little spot fires go past those dozer lines. And you can also see there's a large amount of unburnt fuel in that area, which would be further fuel for the fire. But just based on where we saw the most activity yesterday, it gives an idea of where our key concerns are today. I would say it's this eastern edge right here and this northeastern edge right here. Now, you can see that you see a number of city names in there, and I think it's actually better to look at this map when talking about that. Again, you can see that massive amount of activity that we had on this eastern edge and that northeastern edge, just based on that bright red color. That's the increase in activity that we had yesterday. And then why this map is useful is because you can turn on structures, and just to get a little bearings, there's South Lake Tahoe right there. Here's the Caldor Fire. It started right about here and has mostly been growing to the northeast ever since. And the reason this is such a critical situation right now is if we turn on these structures, you can see how many structures are just to the northeast of where this fire is actively burning right now. So big thing that we're going to be looking at is not only the updates on exactly where this is, the acreage burn, some new evacuation orders that have been put in place, but we're also going to be focusing on the fire weather forecast because there's going to be some strong southwesterly winds coming in this afternoon. And the reason that's so important is because if you look at where a lot of these orange dots are, where those structures are, that's directly to the northeast of where we see most of the fire activity. You can see where Kirkland is right here. We had a large amount of activity right there. That will be fanned by those southwesterly winds coming in this afternoon to try to push that hotspot farther towards the northeast. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on Kirkland later this afternoon. But I think the number one priority, probably in all of California when it comes to wildfires right now, is this northeastern section right here, where you can see there are thousands of structures as you get closer towards South Lake Tahoe, and you can see where those hotspots increased as of yesterday. So with those southwesterly winds, again, I never try to create any more unnecessary fear than there has to be, but I've been doing these update and forecast videos on wildfires in California for about 2 years now, and I would say this is honestly one of the most critical situations that I've personally ever forecasted for. We have the hotspots right there. We have all of those thousands of structures. We have a red flag warning in place and those southwesterly winds coming in at about 25 to 35 miles per hour. This afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, it looks like the winds are going to be even stronger, and then there's still some strong winds on Wednesday. So one useful thing to do is always look at where the live hotspots are right now. Again, you can always take this with a bit of a grain of salt because, again, that's satellite imagery picking up these hotspots from space. So we have seen in the past that it's, in some cases, 1 mile to 2 miles off, and it doesn't mean that everything underneath this is burning. Just does give a general idea of where the activity is on the fire. And the number one thing that I take from looking at this map is how much activity we already have early in the morning. So that's key reason that I was showing this live imagery here. We don't often see this much activity at 9 in the morning. So that gives you a good idea of why I'm doing this special update right now, because we're already seeing more hotspots than in some cases we even see in the afternoon hours, and we have even more critical conditions coming in as we get into this afternoon. So just going over all the updated information of everything that happened yesterday to as of right now that you need to know. When it comes, let's actually see if this has been updated since this morning. So it looks like it has. So Caldor Fire, as of right now, is at 177,000 acres, so a large increase from what we were seeing yesterday morning. And if we want to see where a lot of that acreage burned has happened and how it has progressed over time, you can see where you have those green colors. That's where it first started. That's August 15th. I'm showing the legend on the very far right of the screen right here. Green color is August 15th. As you transition into the yellow, that's where it's 20th to the 23rd. And then as you get to the dark reds to the purples, that's where the more recent growth has been. So this paints a picture of why I have those 3 key areas of concern. One spot is this western finger, where we have seen a fair bit of activity recently, and that has been creating challenges for CAL FIRE to keep that area of the fire within containment lines. But then clearly the spots that grew the most yesterday, it's that dark purple color that showed what grew on August 29th. And you can see we had a huge run on the southeastern section of this fire and an even larger run on the northeastern section of the fire. So just zooming in here so you can actually see where the most recent fire perimeter is with regards to some of these areas. You can see that perimeter right there. We have Place, not sure I'm saying that one right, Kit Carson, and then one of my main concerns right now because of the large amount of structures is Kirkwood right there. And looking at this map, again, to paint that picture in a different way, you have those active hotspots going on right now, Kirkwood right there, and then we will show those wind gusts coming in later this afternoon, which illustrates why that is one of the big concerns. But the number one concern, again, that dark purple color, you can see what a massive push it made throughout, starting at really about 2 p.m. yesterday into, actually even into right now. We, like I said, had very poor relative humidity recoveries overnight, so it was able to continue its growth even through the overnight hours. We have Echo Lake right there. You can see how close the fire perimeter has gotten to that area. That is one of my key concerns right now. You can actually see that a little bit better on this map. If we zoom in here, You can see where Echo Lake is, and then you can see the extent of where that fire perimeter goes, and then those red dots unfortunately show where some of the recent activity is. Since they collected the fire perimeter data, the satellite has been continuing to pick up more growth to the northeast in that area. So I think that unfortunately is one of the key areas that I'm looking at throughout the morning hours and into this afternoon. But when it comes to percentage contained, we're still at 14%. We actually saw that go down from some previous reports just because the fire perimeter itself increased so much. If we want to see where that containment is located, it's shown on that black line right there versus the red line where the fire is uncontained. We do have containment on that southern edge and that western edge right there, a little bit on this northwestern section right there, but you can see majority of the fire is still uncontained. And unfortunately, in those exact key areas where we have the most concern, that western finger right there, where I didn't show the structures in that area and why that is a concern. So, scrolling over, that western section you can see had some heat activity, but then it's also something to look at because you can see all the unburnt fuel there, and we do have a large amount of structures, but clearly the key spots to look at are where we had the massive amount of growth yesterday on the southeast and the northeast, where it's pushing into an even larger amount of structures. So in those areas, no big surprise there, but you see the red line around those key spots because the fire is still uncontained. One thing to really look at here is where those previous containment lines were. That's where they were hoping to stop this fire, but unfortunately, we had some very critical conditions yesterday where relative humidity was in the low teens. There's a lot of critically dry fuels. We had those afternoon wind gusts being funneled through the topography. It was basically just every fire weather factor that we talk about in these videos all aligned to basically allow that section of the fire to jump those containment lines, and then it took off after doing that. And one thing that we haven't done yet, but so the red dots there show what the growth was yesterday. So in this section of the fire, actually we'll do it right here because that's where those containment lines were that we were just looking at. Yesterday it crossed those containment lines, and then it looks like it grew all the way up to, like I said, the Echo Lake area. So according to this map, it grew about 7 miles yesterday. Again, that is based on satellite information, so not an official number right there, but regardless, you can pretty much make the case that there was a very large amount of growth yesterday. And then continuing to zoom in here, you can see why this is a concern. Lots of structures and infrastructure to the northeast of this fire, considering where that fire is currently uncontained and factoring in the wind gusts this afternoon. Certainly going to be looking there. So with all that being said, number one thing that you should be doing is staying updated with all the evacuation orders and warnings. I put the links for those in the description. Best places to go: Cal Fire, InstaWeb, and then also there's a number of Facebook pages for the different fires that are going on as well. And one map that I will show is just the current evacuation warnings and orders. Where you see that yellow line, that's where it's a warning. That means basically now is the time to prepare to leave. In this case, you'd want to pack up your car, maybe even if you have time, do a little structure protection around your property. One of the top things to do, again, I'm not actually suggesting anybody should do this because it could be considered dangerous, but one of the best things you can do is actually go up on your roof, use a leaf blower to clear off all the leaves, clear out the gutters especially, because one of the top reasons that structure is burned down is burning embers are picked up by the wind, dropped on a roof, goes into the gutters where you have all that fuel that's accumulated, and then it basically starts a fire on your roof and leads to a large amount of, basically, that's one of the top reasons that structures burn down. So if you are in that yellow area, now would be the time to start thinking about doing that kind of preparation stuff, but most importantly, packing up everything you need and staying updated with the local resources. Now, if you're in one of these red areas where we have the mandatory evacuation orders, that means it's no longer time to prepare or pack. That means it's basically time to just get out of the area as fast as you can. And you can see that we do have some new evacuation warnings and orders popping up since we were looking at this yesterday, and even into the update last night. There have been some new ones popping up. So these continue to pop up throughout the day today and change, so it's going to be very crucial to stay updated on that. I do have the link for that in the description below. But when it comes to the structures destroyed, one thing I'll say about that is that that's not factoring what happened yesterday. So to illustrate that point, I believe I have the structures, so the damage assessment map. I just put this link in the description too, just found this map yesterday. So you can see where the majority of those structures destroyed currently are on the Caldor Fire is relatively early in the fire. If we look at that fire progression, when it went through this Grizzly Flats area, that was when it was light green to dark green. So looking at the date, that was when it was maybe the 15th to the 17th. And that was where the current data on the structures destroyed is. Just zooming back into this fire so you can see the overall damage assessment map. All of the data they have so far on the structures destroyed, officially reported, is still in that Grizzly Flats area, but I just wanted to show this so I could show you how this map works. You can actually zoom all the way into this, and if you're interested in an area, you can actually click on the house itself, and then in some of these cases, you can even click a photo to see what the structure actually looks like. So I wanted to show that because even though we're not seeing any of the recent data coming out on this northeastern section where we had all that activity yesterday, we most likely will start to see that over the next couple of days. So this is a good resource to go to if you're interested in that kind of information. But one reason I will say that we don't have that data yet is because there's just higher priorities right now. They are doing everything they can to work on active structure protection, get everybody out to safety, and then once they've hopefully controlled things a little bit, then they'll focus on sending in some damage assessment teams and figuring out exactly what happened. But one other thing I want to say when it comes to that structure number there, and that's actually something to mention as well. It looks like there's 5 injuries, confirmed fire personnel and civilian injuries, so that's actually some new information I hadn't seen yet. So again, hopefully that everybody in those situations recovers. But one other key thing that I wanted to point out here is the current structures threatened. This actually probably should have been the first thing that I said in this update because it's the reason this is such a critical situation right now. You can see 20,000 structures are currently threatened. So with that being said, that really paints the picture of why we have to keep a very close eye on this throughout the day today, because just based on where those active hotspots are and where those structures are and what the winds are going to be doing, it's going to be very important to follow this fire. So I've talked about the fire weather forecast for quite some time now, so I should actually just tell you exactly what's expected over the next couple of days. Again, I don't exactly want to show you what's happening because, as I was saying, it is one of the most critical fire weather forecasts that we've seen this season when you factor in what the weather is going to be doing combined with all the socioeconomic factors that we've already been talking about. So Friday and Saturday were actually relatively good days. We had this high pressure over us, which means we had weaker winds. We had just smoke settling down over the fire, which was basically creating an inversion and not allowing as much sunlight to come through to the fire. And it was basically still active Friday and Saturday, but not that bad. Yesterday, we started to see the first effects of this trough coming in, which brought in some slightly windier conditions, which cleared out a lot of that smoke, which was what allowed that fire to really pick up yesterday and end up looking like that, where we had a massive amount of smoke coming off of the fire. Now, where the bad news comes in is that trough that brought a slight uptick in winds yesterday is going to be strengthening over the next 2 days and bringing a large increase in winds as we get into this afternoon, but especially Tuesday afternoon. So as of right now, we are already seeing some wind gusts up to 15 to 20 miles per hour, but my main concern is as we get into 11 a.m., so still fairly early in the day, we're already seeing wind gusts around 30 miles per hour, and then as we get into 2 p.m., picks up to 35, 5 p.m., most likely picks up even more at that point. And then we're going to be combining those wind gusts with the exact same factors that we had yesterday. Some warm conditions in the mid 70s. In other areas of the fire, we might actually be in the 80s and possibly even low 90s. But then the even bigger factor, it's going to be very dry as well. Low relative humidity in the possibly low teens to single digits. And the reason that's so important is because the drier the air is, the drier the fuels are, and then it's the interaction of those winds and the dry air and the dry fuels that I'm mostly concerned about. Because when you get winds like that, think about that's coming from the southwest. So what that's going to try to do on this fire is, one, it's just going to push those flames forward. But as we've seen throughout this year, one of the biggest factors that happens with those winds and the very dry fuels is it picks up burning embers and then it tosses it outside of where the fire was already burning. When it's dropped into those critically dry fuels, there is about a 90 to 100% chance of ignition, which leads to its own little spot fire. And then instead of that fire having to move along the ground, it's able to rapidly spread because it's basically just able to leapfrog through the use of those spot fires. So that's, I think, my main concern when it comes to how windy it's going to be and how dry it's going to be. One, that wind is just going to increase the fire behavior, but it's also going to increase the ability for those spot fires to happen. And then, again, I'll hopefully do another one of these update and forecasts tomorrow morning to focus on the full forecast for tomorrow, but I do just want to show what is coming in. I'll also for sure be doing an extended live stream tonight following this entire event as it's happening. But I do want to show what's coming in Tuesday afternoon because it actually looks like there's going to be even gustier winds getting into Tuesday afternoon. So we had some critical conditions yesterday. Looks like today, fire weather forecast wise, is going to be even worse than yesterday. And I hate to say it, but Tuesday is looking like it's going to be even worse than today is going to be. So this is an event that unfortunately we're just going to have to follow over the next few days to see exactly what's going to happen. Now, if we want to see a simulation of what's going to happen, I always show this in these videos. This is the WRF S-Fire wildfire simulation model. We run this out of the San Jose State Fire Weather Research Laboratory. It's one of the top wildfire models in the world. The reason for that is because it takes that fire perimeter, those active hotspots, combines it with the fuel, weather, topography variables to simulate where that fire is going to burn. And then what sets this model apart from a lot of the others is then it also simulates how that wildfire is going to create its own weather and then how that weather is then going to impact the wildfire. And this was actually a big factor that we saw yesterday. When we were looking at one of the live cameras yesterday, you won't be able to see it in this, but I could just illustrate it. When we were looking at the live camera yesterday, we saw the winds blowing in one direction, and then I believe because of some of that wildfire generated weather, we saw the winds just rapidly shift direction, and that's one of the critical things that can lead to very erratic, gusty fire spread. So I'll press play so we can see what's expected to burn throughout the day today and throughout the day tomorrow. But before I do, I always have to say this is an experimental forecast only. It doesn't take into account fire suppression tactics, so I'm not saying this is exactly what's going to happen, but it is always a good illustration to show at least where the fire is expected to be the most active, and then it's also a good illustration for how to basically show exactly what I'm saying, where the winds and the fire align. That's most likely where you're going to see the most growth. So key areas to look at, I'll maybe just show this once. So right there it's simulating some of that activity we had yesterday, really growing to the north and the northeast right there. And then throughout the day today, as it gets into this afternoon, you can see those wind gusts picking up from the south and the southwest, and then that has the ability to push that fire farther to the north and the northeast. So clearly the model for the forecast today is expecting the majority of that activity to be up in the north there. And again, you're probably seeing this exactly as I am, where it is showing a large amount of activity throughout the day today. So with that, I will say it's an experimental forecast only. I'll remind you of that, but given the growth we had, I usually don't say this, but given the growth we had yesterday and the fact that today's fire weather forecast is looking even more critical, I honestly wouldn't rule out what this model is showing. So I don't say that to try to scare anybody, but I do say that to drive the point home that the next few days are going to be critical to stay updated with all those local resources and evacuation orders. Now, I'll continue to click play because that's where the real wind event comes in as we get into tomorrow afternoon. That's when those 35 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts were coming in. So let's play this again, but just focus on this northeastern section because, as I was saying, that's the big concern we have moving forward. And mainly look at where you have those winds, that's where you see a lot of that fire activity. So that was simulating what we had last night and into early this morning. And then we're going to start to see what it's predicting throughout the day today. You can see expecting those southerly winds to start picking up. That's going to lead to an increase in behavior towards the northeast right here. And then, again, it's not just the winds accounting for this fire behavior right here. It's also the critically dry fuels. Actually, that's something I will point out. Where you see that green color, that's where we have a lot of, actually it'd be better to even show it on this map. Where you have that green color, that's where you have a lot of those fuels, very dry forest. We were looking at the tree mortality viewer yesterday where there are a very large amount of dead and dry trees in this area due to bark beetles, the drought and disease, all kinds of things working against us there. Towards the north, we have this much rockier terrain. So the model is not predicting as much activity in that rocky terrain, but where we have that continuous fuels, that will unfortunately allow the fire behavior to continue in that area. So again, we're about to see a very large increase as it gets into that fire weather forecast for tomorrow, where the winds are going to be even stronger than today. So we'll remind you, this is just an experimental forecast. But I do like to show this because it's a perfect illustration of those stronger winds coming in. You can see those vectors get larger, and then where that happens and where it's aligned with where we have that continuous fuels, that is where it's predicting that fire growth over the next 2 days. So hopefully that didn't scare anybody too much. That wasn't the point of showing that, but I did want to just show that because I think that's a good illustration of the importance of staying updated with all those evacuation orders and warnings over the next couple of days. But overall, when it comes to the Caldor Fire, I think I could just do a very quick summary here. We had a large amount of activity yesterday. It was very dry. We have some extremely dry fuels in this area. So we had a very large amount of growth to the northeast and the north. You can actually see that better on this map. That purple color shows where all of that growth was yesterday. We jumped some containment lines. Unfortunately, we will be seeing some new reports of an increase in structures destroyed on the Caldor Fire. We don't have that information yet, but just seeing some of the videos coming out, it certainly did destroy some of the structures in these areas. So we'll have to stay updated on that as we move forward. But even more crucial as of right now is to stay updated on the fire weather forecast because we have those southwesterly winds coming in Monday afternoon, or today, Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday. Looks like it's going to be peaking on Tuesday afternoon. That is, again, creating that red flag warning over the entire Caldor Fire. And just to summarize what that means is, with a red flag warning, it means there's potential for easier fire starts. For that, I think of those spot fires that we were talking about, the potential for rapid spread of new or existing fires. And then right there, that basically sums up everything we've been talking about. Wind gusts up to 20, 35 miles per hour, and some of those drainages and canyons most likely can even see up to 40. And then those minimum daytime humidities, it's going to be very dry. And just looking at the fire weather outlook, you can see they did have some critical conditions yesterday, but that drives the point home that today and Tuesday are unfortunately expected to see even more activity than we saw yesterday. So this is certainly going to be something that we have to follow very closely throughout the next couple of days. As I said, I will do an extended live stream this evening following this event in real time as it's actually playing out. I'll go to all the different links where we find the most recent information, And then I'm also planning on doing another one of these updates and forecasts tomorrow morning just to see if that weather forecast changes at all. I'm certainly hoping it does, but it's been fairly constant for about a week now. So we're just going to have to take this situation as it comes. At this point, the best thing that you can do is stay updated with the resources. If you're in that yellow area, now would be the time to prepare, pack up, get ready to leave. If you're in that red area, that means there's a mandatory evacuation and you should leave immediately. So wrap up saying that. That link is in the description. That'll be the key thing to follow throughout the day today. And I will be back later this evening to follow this event as those winds start to pick up. So I hope this video was helpful. Sorry for not looking at the live chat throughout this video. I just wanted to get as much information out as fast as I could. I will be back later. So you can subscribe to this channel, and you can also click the notification bell to get updated when I actually go live this evening. So as always, thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who has been affected by these wildfires. Huge thank you to all the wildland firefighters out there, and I will see you all this evening. We'll be able to get through this event. It's just going to be very important to stay updated with it as the event unfolds. So I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.